A while back, during my high school days, I found myself chilling with my buddies. Our conversation took a turn towards the mysterious world of the deep web. One of my pals, let's call him Jake, had ventured into it before, and he shared some intriguing tales. We delved into the depths of the deep web during our entire lunch period at school, and I couldn't help but become increasingly curious about it. Later that day, once I was back home from school, my curiosity got the best of me, pushing me to explore the deep web myself. I exchanged texts with Jake, who provided me with the browser to use and step-by-step instructions. Following his guidance, I successfully accessed the deep web. As I ventured further, I decided to check out some deep web websites. The very first one led me to a screen that was completely black, except for a small icon in the upper left corner. Clicking on it transported me to a web page filled with images devoid of any context. There were pictures of animals like fish or a bear, mixed with an assortment of random objects. My curiosity led me to click on the image of a fish, and the page began loading. The loading process took an agonizingly long time, about 30 seconds or so. Once it finally completed, to my surprise and unease, my face appeared on the screen, captured by my own webcam. In a panic, I hastily grabbed a blanket from my bed and covered the webcam, causing the screen to go black. Relief washed over me briefly, but my calm was short-lived. Text started to appear on the screen, slowly getting typed out. The first thing that caught my eye was my name. Not just my first name, but my full name, including my middle and last names. This revelation sent shivers down my spine. To add to my horror, more personal information began to appear on the screen. The school I attended, my phone number, and even the state and city where I lived. Overwhelmed, I decided to close out of the browser, but to my dismay, my mouse was frozen. Panic set in as I repeatedly pressed Ctrl+Delete, desperately trying to regain control. In my frantic state, I began pressing random buttons on the keyboard, hoping for a miracle. Even turning off the monitor proved futile. I pressed the power button on my computer, but nothing happened. Frustrated and scared, I went to the wall and unplugged the power source, an extension cord connected to the wall. Everything shut down at that moment. I sat there in shock for what felt like an eternity, taking in the gravity of the situation. After a few minutes, I mustered the courage to plug my computer back in and swiftly deleted the browser. Fortunately, I had been planning to get a new computer for a while, and shortly after that eerie incident with the deep web, I finally made the upgrade. The memory of that chilling experience will forever be etched in my mind, serving as a stark reminder of the dark corners one can stumble upon in the vast realm of the deep web. A long while back, around the mid-2000s, during my high school days, I found solace in my computer after school. Despite not being one of the popular jocks, I was a shy kid, and gaming became my go-to source of fun. The concept of the deep web intrigued me, so one day, I decided to venture into it for the first time. Being somewhat tech-savvy, I easily figured out how to access it. I started with a few normal websites and gradually stumbled upon the more unusual corners of the internet. Some of the sites I found were downright bizarre, but there was one that stood out. It seemed to be filled with puzzles and codes. Intrigued, I spent about 10 to 15 minutes trying to decipher them. Suddenly, out of nowhere, my fax machine started printing something. The paper it produced was covered in a large series of numbers, leaving me bewildered about how this could happen. As the printer spat out more and more pages, a sense of unease crept over me. To stop the incessant printing, I hastily took all the paper out of the printer. However, my printer seemed intent on its mysterious task. In the midst of this bizarre situation, my phone, an old landline without caller ID, started ringing. Curiosity getting the better of me, I answered, only to be met with a series of beeps and strange noises on the other end. Perturbed, I hung up the phone, realizing it was time to log off the deep web. Closing out of the puzzling website, I powered off my computer, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling that had settled over me. Just when I thought the strange events were over, the phone rang again. This time, I answered, unsure if it might be my parents. Yet the only response I received was the same perplexing series of noises. Growing increasingly disturbed, I decided to unplug the printer from the wall, hoping it would cease its mysterious activity. The phone calls persisted, so I opted to unplug the phone as well. With my parents still at work, I began ignoring the unnerving calls. When my parents returned home later, I cautiously plugged the printer and phone back in, hoping that the strange occurrences had come to an end. Fortunately, the calls, faxes, and eerie letters ceased, and life returned to normal. About 2 weeks later, however, I received an unsettling letter in the mail. It was addressed to me, with no return address. Opening it revealed another sheet filled with numbers and code, sending a chill down my spine. Thankfully, this was the last of it. I never encountered more faxes, phone calls, or mysterious letters. Though I'll never know who or what was behind those unnerving incidents, I can only hope it was just a skilled hacker having some twisted fun. Back in the day, I used to explore the deep web quite frequently. Being a computer enthusiast, my friends and I would occasionally venture into the depths of the web out of sheer curiosity. One day, I found myself alone in a deep web chat room where the conversations always managed to captivate me. On this particular day, I was mostly an observer, watching people interact. Every now and then, I'd join in with a comment or two. That's when one user in the chat singled me out, turning our casual conversation into a heated argument. Things took a dark turn when he threatened to come after me. At first, I thought it was just a joke, so I responded with a sarcastic remark that only fueled his anger. He hurled more menacing words my way, making me increasingly uncomfortable. Feeling uneasy, I decided to exit the chat, closing everything down and logging off. About 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, asking why I had left. It sent shivers down my spine, but given the reputation of skilled hackers on the deep web, I tried to brush it off. Ignoring the text, I hoped the stranger wouldn't reach out again, though I couldn't shake a lingering sense of fear. A couple of hours later, my phone started ringing with an unknown number on the display. I answered, only to be met with eerie silence on the other end, just breathing. I hung up, trying to resume my activities, but a few minutes later, as I glanced out my front window, I noticed a car parked in front of my house. Straining to see who it was in the darkness, I couldn't make out anything from the odd angle. I kept a watchful eye on it for the next few hours, and it didn't budge. As night fell, I decided it was time to get some sleep. Before bed, I covered all the windows, double-checked the locks, and cautiously retired. It took me a while, but eventually, sleep claimed me. The next morning, I cautiously approached the window, relieved to find the car gone. When I powered up my computer, a chilling revelation awaited me. Several files were already open, displaying photos of my house, my car, and the worst of all, a picture of me sleeping. Taken from inside my house, seemingly snapped from my bedroom doorway. Disbelief washed over me, and I frantically searched every room in my house. But the intruder had vanished. As I reached the front door, I realized it was unlocked, leaving me baffled about how they managed to gain entry. A deep sleeper, I hadn't been stirred by their presence. For the following days, paranoia consumed me. I constantly glanced over my shoulder and peered out the window, half expecting the return of the ominous car. Things seemed to calm down until about a week later when I awoke in the dead of night, hearing a sound emanating from my room. Initially, I dismissed it as my imagination. But as I sat up, I caught a glimpse of a man walking away. This time I didn't hesitate. I immediately called the police. As I dialed, I heard the intruder leaving my house. Though I regretted not involving the police after the initial incident, feeling foolish, I recounted the entire ordeal to them. They took down the information, assuring me they'd patrol the neighborhood over the next few nights. Thankfully, nothing further occurred, and I made a firm decision to steer clear of the deep web. The unnerving events had left an indelible mark on my sense of security, reminding me of the dangers lurking in the virtual shadows. In my younger days, I moved into my own place for the first time, and around that time, I decided to delve into the mysterious world of the deep web. The idea of it had always intrigued me since my childhood, and eventually, curiosity got the better of me. As a lifelong gamer, I was particularly interested in exploring the types of games available on the deep web. My initial deep web excursions involved exploring various websites, some offering typical games, and others presenting rather unusual ones. Over the next week or so, I continued to navigate the deep web, trying out different games. Then, one day, I stumbled upon an odd-looking game that had been recommended to me in one of the gaming forums I frequented. Upon launching the game, I was immediately struck by the crude graphics reminiscent of early 90s video games. I found myself controlling a character within a house, and to my surprise, the in-game house eerily mirrored my real-life home. Despite the less than impressive graphics, the accuracy of the virtual representation of my house was mind-boggling. Every detail from furniture to the placement of my TV and couch was spot on. The more I explored the in-game house, the more uneasy I became, wondering how anyone could possess such detailed information. Suddenly, another user appeared in the game, a figure clad entirely in black, wearing a ski mask. This mysterious character was now inside the virtual version of my house, and a sense of panic set in. I hurriedly attempted to escape in the game, but things took a bizarre turn as the game started glitching severely. Within a minute, the game froze and eventually crashed. The unsettling experience was enough to make me decide that I was done with the deep web. I promptly deleted the browser I had used to access it, hoping to put the strange encounter behind me. However, a few days later, in the middle of the night, my phone alerted me to activity detected by my doorbell security camera. Anxiously, I checked the footage, hoping for a mundane explanation. To my dismay, the video revealed a man dressed entirely in black, donning a ski mask, approaching my front door. He stood there, gazing into the camera for a while, then slowly waved before turning and walking away. I kept watching, half expecting his return, but he didn't come back. The incident left me on edge for the remainder of the night. Since that unnerving occurrence, my interest in the deep web has vanished entirely. The peculiar connection between the strange game and the real-life visitation was enough to convince me that some mysteries are best left unexplored. A couple of years back, when I was still in high school at the tender age of 15, a peculiar incident unfolded. It was one rainy night, and my older brother, a senior in high school, and I found ourselves at home alone, our parents away. With boredom setting in, we decided to satisfy our curiosity about the deep web, something we had always been intrigued by. After some contemplation, my brother, claiming to know how to access the deep web, led us to an old computer tucked away in the basement. We figured the basement provided a certain level of seclusion, just in case we encountered any hacking risks. Despite our reservations, we couldn't resist the temptation. And once my brother successfully navigated us into the deep web, we started exploring random content before stumbling upon a chat room. Engaging in conversations with some random users, we soon received a link from an anonymous user. The link arrived without any context, and a gut feeling urged me to caution my brother against clicking it. Ignoring my warning, he clicked the link, and in an instant, the computer froze, plunging the room into complete darkness. With all the lights off in the basement, the only sound was the rhythmic patter of rain outside. We assumed the link had crashed the computer, possibly even breaking it. I suspected it might be a prank by the user. My brother attempted to troubleshoot by pressing keys and moving the mouse, but the computer remained unresponsive. We decided to abandon the basement and returned upstairs, contemplating our next move, convinced we had somehow damaged the old computer. After a brief discussion, We mustered the courage to venture back downstairs. Upon entering the room housing the computer, we were met with a chilling sight. The screen displayed an image of a man wearing a truly eerie clown mask against a black background. His gaze was fixed on the screen, a haunting smile stretching across his face. Initially thinking it was a creepy video, our shock escalated when the clown pointed directly at my brother. In a panic, my brother distanced himself, but the clown persistently pointed at him as he moved around the room. My heart raced as the clown then shifted its attention to me, waving a finger as if beckoning me closer to the screen. Reacting swiftly, my brother covered the webcam attached to our computer, shouting at me to shut it down. I rushed to press the power button, but to our horror, the clown image lingered on the screen, unaffected. Desperation set in as I unplugged the entire power strip from the wall, finally shutting down the computer. It took us a few minutes to catch our breath, leaving the old computer in the basement unplugged for the next few days. Surprisingly, when we decided to check on it again, the computer seemed to function perfectly fine. The bizarre encounter left us perplexed, the memory lingering as a strange tale from our teenage years. We decided to steer clear of the deep web after that unnerving incident, a cautionary lesson in the unexpected perils that lurk in the shadows of the internet.